Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the ELS webinar on student athlete admission in the US. Before we get started, I would like to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Divya Srinivas, Head of Counseling and Research at ELS India. Divya spent 10 years in the US education system, earning a PhD in communication from the University of New Mexico and Masters in Journalism from the University of Missouri. She is the recipient of the Washington Program Scholarship, has undertaken research funded by National Institutes of Health, and has also referred journal publication to her credit. As Head of Counseling and Research, she is responsible for training and quality assurance to deliver best practices in international education. She believes that effective outcomes for students are facilitated by a combination of institutional support, systematic assessment, appropriate capacity building plans, and individual initiative. So during the webinar, if you have any questions, kindly type it into the questions tab and it will be addressed at the end of the presentation. Thank you. Over to you, Divya.
Thank you, Priya. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Today, we have this session today because ELS has experienced a bit of success in, to put it modestly, a bit of success in matriculating student athletes to various universities in the United States. In today's presentation, we will give you highlights of the experience of some of our student athletes to help you understand what it takes to become a successful student athlete in the United States. India is a country where cricket is a religion. We are used to seeing people play gully cricket just about at the turn of every street corner. But what sets apart the gully cricket players from the international players? That's what we will see today based on the case studies of some of our successful student athletes. Granted, none of the athletes that I will speak to you today are cricket players. Sorry to disappoint, because internationally, well, in the United States for sure, cricket is not a major sport. Cricket is sort of unofficially a league sport, very student driven or league driven. It does not have the momentum of college athletics or professional athletics in the United States. So if you're a cricket player, then this is not the presentation for you. But if you're interested in any other college sports which really merits the student's admissions process, then you're looking at the right place for information. So really what separates the gully players from the accomplished ones, really from parks to playgrounds and sports academies, really these players cultivate a disciplined training regimen. They train from a very young age. They are very focused on acquiring the skills necessary to compete at the national as well as the international levels. And of course, their training has to be supported by a very strong infrastructure, not only for their sport, but also for their academic excellence, because you are today talking about university admissions, and university admissions assessments, students have to fulfill two criteria. One is their athletic ability and the potential to contribute to the team, but also their potential to succeed in academia. Right. So today we will look at some of our successful students to see what really separated them from the others. Second of all, why we are looking at college athletes is because college athletics is really integral to American cultural values, and college athletes are really revered sort of demigods, so to speak, of the US academic and cultural environment, because if you've seen any international sporting event, you will see the amount of effort, investments, and rewards that are really hoisted on these very successful candidates at the domestic as well as international sporting events. And these big sporting events within the United States and abroad really are able to build community in the US. Communities rally around their home teams. The home teams are typically the college team or the professional team that is from their city, or at a more international level, if you look at the World Cup soccer, communities really rally around their teams, their preferred teams, during the sporting season. So it is very much like in India, where cricket is a religion, where we really rally around our cricket players. In the US too, during each sporting season, communities rally around their players. So it's a really huge community building experience. Winning is always the goal. Winning is at the heart of being American. Americans love to win. They compete to win. They toil to win. They work to win. Everything in American culture is about winning. Of course, not everybody is a winner. So a good sportsmanship, again, is a very valued individual quality that athleticism builds, because every game has only one outcome. You win or you lose. So at the heart of being an athlete is also sportsmanship, where people know what the rules are, they play by the rules, and then they put the best effort that they can and their training into winning, but also when they losing with dignity, but also losing knowing that they will have another chance to win again some other time with the right amount of talent, skill, and training. So these are some of the core values that embodies being a college athlete, that propels a college spirit in the United States. And of course, physical fitness is one of the building blocks of being an athlete. If we're not physically fit, we're not going to be a winner. So really, athletes are revered in US cultural society. Any student, athlete or non-athlete, who goes to the United States must experience this athletic culture to understand the importance placed on being a sport, being a winner, being a person who carries forth the community spirit. And physical fitness is, of course, important in every aspect of life, no matter where you are. And being an athlete allows you to be all these things in society. So to understand what does it take to become a college athlete, first of all, one needs to become familiar with the process of international student athlete recruitment. Many colleges have, there is the NCAA, which governs all athletics in the United States, but then there are certain games and certain sports that don't come under the NCAA. They're called club sports. So typically you have the NCAA sports, and then you have, so varsity sports and club sports are the two different types of sports that we'll talk about today. But the recruitment process is more or less the same. First of all, we have coaches who have a large database of potential recruits. This database of recruits can come from individuals they have followed over time, people they have known in their own districts or elsewhere, people they've been following, people's careers that they've been following for a while, from camp visits, referred sources, and oftentimes there's something called a student athlete form that is available, or the student questionnaire that's available on the website of many student athletic teams that we can fill to make ourselves visible on their database, make ourselves present on their database. So the first step to the recruiting process is to make it to the database. And some large camps, some really large sport universities have up to 5,000 potentials in that database. So to whittle that down to a very, very narrow 10 or 20 who will make it to their team, you can see that this process takes a while. They start the recruiting process a year in advance of the actual signing. So it's important to get on this list quite early. The next thing is the evaluation. As I said earlier, there is the athletic potential evaluation. That is, what are your vital statistics as far as your athletics go? We will look at the stats of some of our athletic graduates in a little bit, but every game has stats. What are your stats and how do they compare to national stats as well as how do they compare to international stats is really important. The more international exposure you already have in your sport, the more likely you are to be noticed and to catch the interest of the evaluation committee. Now keep in mind that all college teams have budgets, so it's not always possible for coaches and scouts to come and see you play where you're at. So ELS, really, we understand the evaluation process. We understand that Indian students need to increase their exposure to college coaches, and we are able to guide you with an appropriate strategy to increase your exposure to coaches, to build your profile, to make it to the short list. And of course, we guide you with the application process as you proceed along. So once you have gotten on the database, you have made it to the evaluation. As I said earlier, the first part of the evaluation is your athletic potential. But there is also the academic eligibility. As a college athlete, you have to meet the minimum academic requirements of the university. Otherwise, they will not be able to take you on their team. Students have been rejected from teams for simple things like not being able to meet basic English proficiency requirements, right? Because you are going to study in an English-speaking country, and if you can't meet the English proficiency requirement, no matter how good a player you are, until you pull up your English language scores, they're not going to be able to take you on to their team, because they still have to justify how do you expect a student to be successful in his or her classes. So the evaluation really is a good combination of your athletic potential and also your academic eligibility to their athletic program. And of course, all of this is relative to other recruits. So your strengths and weaknesses compared to other students in the database is always going to play a part in whether you make it to the team or not. So what we do at ELS is we take what you have and try to make it the best that you can in order to proceed with the process. And we customize our services to your to where you're at. We assess where you're at and where you want to be, and we customize our services to your process. So once you've made it to the database, the preliminary evaluations are done. If the coaches are interested in you, they will reach out to your family. They will reach out to you. Typically, the negotiations happen with the family because college athletes tend to be minors. So they do need to deal with the family. They understand that the families are a big part of the negotiation process. And if they can't convince the family, they can't get the athlete. So they will start contacting family if they're interested in having you on their team. And of course, a big part of the recruitment is also hosting visits. That is, you and your family will be invited to go and visit the campus, survey the infrastructure before you make your decisions on whether to accept the offer or not. Once the contact has been established, once they've sort of hooked you, or once they've caught your interest, and this happens with the players that they really want on their team, they start to make verbal offers on what scholarship is possible and what is not, what will it take for you to get on their team, those kinds of discussions will take place. We encourage students during this time to stay in touch with the coaches as often as they can until they are convinced on what offer they're going to take. Students may receive one offer, students may receive multiple offers, of course, depending on their own merit. That said, all verbal offers will come with a timeline. Students and their families will be expected to accept an offer within a stipulated time. So if you receive one offer and it has a deadline of just a couple of days and you're wondering, I don't know if I'm going to get other offers, I don't know, it's a tough call. And of course we in the counseling team will take into consideration odds of other discussions, but these are certain things that one must be prepared for when they receive offers, because all offers come with a deadline. If you don't accept the offer within the deadline, the offer will expire, which is one of the ways in which they get the student to commit to the team early in the process. And of course, there will be a time lag between when the verbal offer and commitment is made and when they actually sign the athlete. Typically, teams do not want to rescind offers. They usually want to give offers. But however, in the event of a physical injury or in the event of any disciplinary misconduct on the part of the student, offers can be rescinded. Teams can shy away from signing the athlete. It doesn't often happen, but it could happen. So having a verbal offer and getting a commitment is not always a guarantee of signing the athlete. Please let it be known that while you have received a verbal offer, during the time between the verbal offer and signing the athlete, you're still going to be assessed in terms of keeping up your school grades, in terms of keeping up your athletic performance, and also in terms of keeping up your disciplinary activity. So this is the basic 5-step process from getting on the database to signing the athlete that students know about. Of course, when you come in for counseling, we will guide you through each of these stages individually based on your progress. This is one of our successful students, Aditya Raghavan. He's a squash player. Now, squash is a club sport. It's not a varsity sport. It is not an NCAA sport. So it's not governed by the NCAA. It is a club sport. And Aditya Raghavan is currently playing at the University of Princeton, which is an Ivy League university and one of the top ranked, actually it is the top ranked university in the United States right now. So what made Aditya a successful student athlete? First of all, he was a very distinguished squash player already. He started playing squash at a very young age, and of course, at the junior level, he was a quarter-finalist at the British Junior Open, a 2-time quarter-finalist at the Asian Junior Open, again semi-finalist under 15 at the British Open, French Open, he won the French Junior Open under 15 and National Junior Championship. He won under 15 and under 17, and he is ranked one of the top athletes in India in squash. So he was already a very distinguished player of national merit and with international exposure by the time he had begun his application process. He already had been noticed by college coaches because of his international exposure and performance, and he did receive an offer from Princeton during the early pre-read stages itself. So he was one of our scouted candidates. He had established early contact with potential coaches in the US, and he had narrowed down Princeton as his choice to study at and to play squash, because Princeton is the #1 university in the United States for undergraduate studies. He did complete a financial pre-read to receive offers, and he did receive a partial scholarship to Princeton. His SAT score was 600 out of 800 in the reading, 750 out of 800 in math, and 680 out of 800 in the writing component. This was the old SAT format, and of course in SAT math, he had aced the SAT math, 800 on 800, and SAT physics, he's close to acing it at 780 out of 800. So you can see that he is a brilliant student, with academically brilliant student with exceptional squash distinction to have made it to Princeton University. His UG GPA was very high, 3.75, and he's gone on to study engineering at Princeton University. Our next candidate, she actually matriculated even before Aditya. She didn't go to an Ivy League university, but and she did not have the international exposure that Aditya had. So she did go to a liberal arts college, Lemoyne University in the United States. She plays tennis there. Now tennis, unlike squash, is a NCAA sport. So there are some additional protocols that one must follow in order to be an NCAA potential. So first thing that students need to do is register for NCAA. They have to register for NCAA student athlete certification. What they do is they assess their eligibility to play for NCAA. They assess student athletes' eligibility, primarily academic eligibility to play for NCAA, and they also make sure that you are a student of amateur status. That is, if you're a professional player, you cannot compete to be a college athlete. If you've already played professionally, you cannot. For example, if you're an NBA player, you cannot play for college. So they require students to be amateur athletes. So they look at the academic record of the students. So in order for them to see your academic records, you must send all your transcripts. 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade transcripts have to be sent to the NCAA Eligibility Center to this address so that they can assess your core courses that you've taken and if it meets the requirements of the US universities. Along with that, you're also expected to send your SAT scores. Now you may wonder, if I'm only in 11th grade beginning the process, how can I send my 12th grade mark sheets? Now unless you send your 10th grade mark sheets, NCAA Eligibility Center will not certify you as an amateur athlete eligible for college athletics. So what we recommend that you do is send whatever you have, and once you have received your 12th grade transcripts, you must complete your file with the NCAA Eligibility Center. You must inform your college coaches that this is how you will proceed with it. You must have your NCAA Eligibility Center certification prior to your enrollment at the university. So if you're going to begin in fall 2017, you should complete, which usually begins in August or September, you should complete your NCAA eligibility certification by at least July, so that by the time you travel to the US and start with your classes in August, you will have your eligibility certification completed. So this is one of the basic paperwork that needs to be completed in order to be an NCAA athlete. Now mind you, Aditya Raghavan did not have to do this because squash is not an NCAA sport, it is a club sport, but Ritika had to do it because tennis is an NCAA sport. So if your sport comes under the NCAA ordinance, then you must comply by the rules of the NCAA. Now, what is the NCAA minimum eligibility requirements? You should complete the minimum courses in high school. Typically, students who complete the ICSE curriculum or the CBSE curriculum in India in the science stream will have completed the core course requirements at US universities. Right? So what are the core course requirements? It's basically 4 years of English, 3 years of math, 3 years of science, and 3 years of social sciences. These are the core course requirements that you are expected to fulfill. And if you have not done that, you'll have to work with your counseling team to see how you can fulfill the core course requirements. Ratika Vajravel, as I said, she fulfilled. She was she had already taken all of the social studies courses. She had done science in 9th and 10th. She had done English for 4 years. She had done math. So she had fulfilled all of her core course requirements. She had scored a 600 in the reading of the SAT, 590 in math, and 630 in the writing, TOEFL 108. She was interested in BS in international relations. So how did we go about choosing the universities for her? Again, in contacting coaches, we put the responsibility on the student because really the coach wants to know who you are, not who your counselor is. So we encourage students to take the initiative and independently deal with the student, of course, with their families, but also with our guidance. So Ritika Vajravel had received a lot of references from her Indian coach as well as her other tennis colleagues in India as to which universities she could consider based on their own experiences. So she really used her Indian tennis social network to find recommendations of US university coaches. She had emailed all the coaches directly. We had encouraged her to create a recruitment video. A recruitment video is basically a video which shows the coach. Now, keep in mind that Ritika has not had any international exposure, so she's not really had the opportunity to be seen by any international coaches. So what she had to do is create a video, a 5-8 minute video where she demonstrates on video her game to the coaches. So she got on the database of these coaches. She emailed them with her game reel or her recruitment video where she's able to show her best her best shots, her best stroke, her backhand, her forehand, her serve. So the recording had the highlights of some of her key movements and her strengths, and the coaches used that to evaluate her potential. And of course, she was nationally ranked at that time, 47th in the country. So these stats, along with her statistics of how many games she had won and how many games she had qualified at the quarterfinals or the semifinals, all of that information was also provided to these coaches along with the recruitment video in order to not only get on their database, but also to have their interest in assessing her. She's a very diligent, very hardworking, very someone who really takes initiative, and she's relentless. You know, she sent so many emails out, and she received several offers of scholarships. Of course, they were all partial scholarships. Very rarely do universities offer full scholarships for student athletes. She received several partial scholarships, and then she chose Le Moyne after having considered various offers of scholarships as well as potential for her own career success. So as I had said, it is the student's responsibility to communicate with the coaches, because at the end of the day, they want to know who you are as a player. How do you stand out among the crowd? The evaluation process begins from the minute you make contact with the coaches, right? That's the very first impression you make. How do you capture the attention and hold on to their attention is really important. And with each communication, the important thing is to impress upon them that you are the right candidate for their team, either because of your performance, your ability to work with a team, your ability to be adaptable, especially as a foreign student, to a new cultural environment and play on their turf by their rules. These are all really significant aspects, so that how you communicate with them, how you're able to communicate with them and get them to understand who you are and persuade them into having you on their team. All of these are really important. So every point of communication with the coach is really vital to the recruitment process. So it is the student's responsibility, because you are the one who's being assessed, but we will guide you every step of the way. Coaches expect, so as I said, they evaluate you not only based on your performance for athletics and your academic capability, but they also assess your other aspects like cultural adaptability, your communication skills, your ability to work with a team, your determination. All of these qualities of a athlete are being assessed. How sportive are you? What is your sportsmanship? And of course, at any point, do not give the coaches any false information about your academic or athletic performance in the hope of getting onto the team, because you can't keep a lie alive for very long. If they find out that you have lied, as I said, they can cancel their offer. And if they have made you an offer and if they've signed you on, it won't take them long to sign you off the team. So please do not falsify any documents or any of your capabilities. So the application process itself, the communication with the coaches is a little bit more informal in that it's not a set process. The coaches will communicate with you as needed, and you could communicate with the coaches as needed. Of course, all in a very culturally appropriate, albeit in a very culturally appropriate manner. But the application process itself requires sometimes a financial pre-read, where student will be requested to submit their financials, that is their parents' financials, as to what is their income, what is their expenses, how much are they able to pay towards the student's college. And after assessing the finances of the student thoroughly is when they will be able to make offers on how much money or how much to offer you in terms of scholarships. And we do have students who've received scholarships. We've also had students who've not received scholarships. So as I said, really your athletic capability, your academic ability, as well as your financial requirements will be taken into consideration while making these offers. As said earlier, you have to provide your academic records. For NCAA teams, you'll provide your academic records to NCAA Eligibility Center, but you will also provide your academic records to the university. All standardized test scores have to be submitted directly via your testing center to the university. They may require other documents like your certificates from your sporting events and the like to be submitted towards your application. But of course, that information can also be cross-verified with public records. Statement of purpose is a requirement for all applications. The number of essays that universities require range from 1 to 5 depending on the university to which you're applying, and ELS will assist you with editorial services to improve your statements of purpose. Letters of recommendation is another requirement. You will require two letters of recommendation from any of your high school teachers and one letter of recommendation from a school counselor. The school counselor will have to fill out a special school report on the college application. And of course, we will guide you further with that when you sign up for our services. One thing that you can start doing as a student athlete potential is you can start having a resume ready. Typical resume for students will have work experience, internships and projects and academic experiences and whatnot. But student athletes must have a list of all the tournaments that they have taken part in, not just in terms of participation, how many tournaments have you played, how many tournaments have you won, what is your averages in the core parameters of your sport. What are your averages in your core parameters of your sport, or your highs in the core parameters of your sport? You need to have that enumerated on a document, which you could call the resume, or you could just call your student athletic achievements, right? So when we finalize universities based on the offers that you have received, we will take a look at the athletic and team performance and expectations. That is, we will look at all the verbal offers that you have received from various coaches. We have to see what programmatic choices there are. For example, I have had students receive offers from coaches that did not have the program that the student really wanted. So the student chose not to go there. Right. So if you want to study MS International, if you want to study a BS in International Business and the university does not have that program, then it may not be the right choice for you, no matter how good the offer. Right? Unless you're willing to compromise and sort of take a different course and say, okay, I'll do MS in economics instead, because that will eventually lead me to international business anyway. So again, how adaptable are you? How is the offer compared to the programmatic choices available for your academic aspirations as well as for your athletic aspirations? So we have to really take a look at a combination of different things when we finalize the university that you will eventually matriculate to. Certainly campus life and infrastructure. Again, there are students who do make campus visits and survey the infrastructure available to athletes before they decide whether to accept the offer or not. So certainly you and your family could travel to the universities that you're considering, schedule appointment with the coaches and survey the tennis infrastructure or the squash infrastructure or badminton infrastructure, whatever sport it is that you're interested in, before you decide which university you want to matriculate to. Now keep in mind that the reason why student athletes really want to use that to get as a ticket to get into college is because oftentimes the infrastructure that these students have is comparable to what Olympic athletes would pay thousands of dollars for, right? So you will have access to some of the world's class infrastructure to improve your game in the United States, but it comes with a cost. Certainly scholarships will offset some of those expenses, but in some cases it does not, and you will have to be able to show that you have sufficient funds for 1 year of tuition and living expenses in order to meet the tuition and living expenses at the university, right? So while you may not have, if you do not have a scholarship, you have to show full tuition and living expenses. But if you do have a scholarship, then you only have to show the difference. Again, whether you get the scholarship or not is really dependent on how much the team wants you, and in relation to your academic potential also, right? So we'll have to look at various aspects of the offers as well as the cost and the location and the infrastructure in deciding which university you will matriculate to, depending on the n number of acceptances that you have. This is a case of our student Apurva Adepalli. Again, she had a couple of different, she had a couple of offers, and one in Boston and one in Philly, and she really needed to see which one to go to matriculate to, and she eventually matriculated to Drexel to play squash. Again, a squash player, club sport, not not NCAA sport. So finally, she did end up choosing a university that gave her a better scholarship, and her father did take the time to go visit the campus and survey the infrastructure of Drexel University for her athletics before making the final decision. So here's a case of a student whose father did the school visit. They did get a moderate scholarship. It was not a full scholarship because, as I said, the biggest sports in the US are basketball, baseball, um, and American football. So all of these other athletic programs have much smaller budgets to offer students, right? So while they're able to offer some money, again, the cost of tuition, the infrastructure, all of these will play an important role in how the student decides. So here is what Purva had to say about our process. Just give me a minute. I have to adjust the audio here a little bit before you can hear the video. So I need to disable. Okay. Okay.
Hi, everybody. My name is Vishala Purva Adepalli, and I joined ELS about 6 months back when they. Hi, everybody. My name is Vishala Purva Adepalli, and I joined ELS about 6 months back when they came to school for an orientation. I'm going to the US to do my undergrad, and my stream of interest is business, so I'll probably be majoring in international business or entrepreneurship at Drexel University. Um, so my experience with ELS, well, I think they've been like this pillar of strength for me. I mean, as an international student from Chennai to the US is a very, very different experience, and they've provided so much help, right from the shortlisting of universities to everybody. My name is Vishala Purva Adipalli, and I joined ELS about 6 months back when they came to school for an orientation. I'm going to the US to do my undergrad, and my stream of interest is business, so I'll probably be majoring in international business or entrepreneurship at Drexel University. So my experience with ELS, well, I think they've been like this pillar of strength for me. I mean, as an international student from Chennai to the US is a very, very different experience, and they've provided so much help, right from the shortlisting of universities to just the pre-departure orientation. They've helped me a lot. My counselor is Divya Srinivas and Deepak. Both of them have been very, very kind. I guess my case is a little peculiar because I'm a student athlete. So they've actually took the time out to understand my interests and look at colleges which take my sport very seriously. And in fact, I got scholarship because at Drexel because they specifically said that Drexel has really good squash and stuff. So I was able to, they were able to look at both my squash and academics. So now I could say that I can continue academics, get a very good business degree, and pursue squash at a professional level. So I'm very, very happy with ELS. Big thumbs up to ELS, yeah.
Hi, I'm back. So that was a case of Vishala, who again is a squash player. As I said, again, squash is a club sport, not an NCAA sport. So we do shortlist universities depending on both the availability of the students' academic interests, the students' athletic interests, and we compare that information to the students' performance academically. But of course, we ask them to cast a rather wide net when it comes to contacting coaches to see what the acceptability levels will be for their desired sport. Now, with many athletes, who spend a lot of time in their calendar to training, as I very early on in the presentation, I said students are very disciplined and dedicated training infrastructure and schedule is necessary for successful student athletes. Now, given that, they take a lot of time out of their academic curriculum in order to train. So it becomes very difficult for students to maintain an equal balance. Now, of course, one of our stellar performers were Aditya, who is academically highly qualified as well as highly athletically talented, which got him into Princeton University, which is an Ivy League top-ranked university in the country. But sometimes students find it very difficult to maintain that kind of academic and athletic balance. So what happens to the student athletes who are not able to cope with their classes? Certainly, universities will offer additional coaching and tutoring services for student athletes, but in order to be successful and maintain their success, student athletes must realize what their transferable skills are when it comes to the classroom, when it comes to the playing field, and when it comes to their final employability after they graduate. Because mind you, not every student athlete who graduates with a 4-year degree ends up being a professional athlete. Many of them go on to be employed in various companies in the public and private sector. and they may continue to play either for their local leagues or continue to play for recreation. Not every student athlete graduate becomes a professional player. So it's really important for student athletes to keep that in mind while proceeding along with their academic curriculum, but also know what the transferable skills are in the world of academia as well as in the world of employment. So first thing you need to know is that student athletes have good communication skills. They have the ability to listen clearly because they have to listen to their coaches, they have to listen to their teams, they have to be able to listen to what needs to be done in order to improve their performance on the field. They learn to cooperate and build relationships with others. So excellent communication skills, a very transferable quality that students can use both to succeed in the classroom as well as in the workplace. Good team skills. Even in an individual sport like squash or tennis, you have to understand that you're going to be training with a team. And even with a sport like squash or tennis, there is doubles where you will be partnered with someone else and you have to play. So teamwork is important. Leadership skills, that students are able to lead their teams. Ethics and proper conduct, to behave responsibility and serve as role models to others, and more importantly, play within the rules of the game, because the slightest departure from the rules can get a student um, um, disqualified, right? So ethics and proper conduct, also known as sportsmanship. Um, problem-solving skills to analyze various situations, to gather information and make the good decisions to lead yourself or your team to victory. So on the field, what we call street smarts or field smarts, to be able to solve problems on your toes, while think on your feet and solve problems to get the result you want to get. Self-motivation skills, because training can be very rigorous combined with a very rigorous academic schedule. So student athletes have to constantly be able to be self-motivated to wake up early, go to bed late, and work pretty hard. In fact, you'll be working harder than some of the non-athletic students. Organizational skills and time management skills in order to be able to manage such a rigorous schedule. And the physical skills and knowledge to stay physically fit and also understand what your physical limits are when it comes to your performance. Coping skills to manage your emotions and to cope with setbacks. As I said, not everybody is a winner all the time. So how do you cope with a loss? How do you pull yourself up again after a loss? How do you cope with maybe a physical illness that has created setbacks in your training? So coping skills and the ability to manage your emotions. Execution skills to follow instructions and stay on task and get the job done. Again, and very key management skill, a personal as well as professional management skill is an execution skill. And finally, creativity skills to design new ways of doing things. When you're coping with a loss or when you're finding a new way to overcome a weakness, to identify patterns and organize information in novel ways. These are all transferable skills that you learn on the field that is applicable to both the classroom as well as the professional environment. So our last case study here, or last success story here, is Velavan Sendil Kumar. He is matriculating to Columbia University in this upcoming fall 2017 semester. He has recently won the British Junior Open tournament just earlier this month. He is also the winner in the last year, in 2016, Asian Junior Open under 19, World Junior Championship, he was a quarter finalist, Commonwealth Youth Games bronze medalist, and Junior National Championship in India, he was a player of the championship. Again, a player with a lot of distinctions, both nationally as well as internationally. He had been introduced to the coach at Columbia 2 years ago by one of his other squash friends, and he has stayed in touch with the Columbia coach for a long time. He had received various offers from a lot of other universities also, but he was determined that Columbia was the right place for him to play. And um, he didn't get into Columbia at the outset, but he kept in touch with the coach. The coach constantly gave him recommendations for what he needs to do in order to improve his profile academically as well as athletically in order to get into the team. And he finally did. He finally made it into Columbia this year. He will be joining in fall 2017. So he was constantly in touch for almost 2 years with Coach Swanepoel at Columbia. He did not receive a scholarship, so he is self-financed. He's a very determined and persevering student. Of course, all athletes have this characteristic, but academically he really pushed himself in order to meet the requirements of the university in order to get on the team, and he will be majoring in business this year. So the student athlete journey is not an easy one. Why? Because our Indian infrastructure in school, for example, is not like the American high school infrastructure, where many of the high school students have a lot of facilities available for their training in order to play at the college level. Whereas in India, our high schools don't provide the infrastructure. Our high schools provide an academic infrastructure. Whereas if you want the athletic infrastructure, you have to be at the right place. Our players were at the tennis academy or the squash academy over and above their the schools where they were enrolled. So they were leading up really parallel lives. One was their school life where they were studying the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th alongside their athletic life where they were training rigorously. And really the two systems did not communicate with each other. What the school did was support the student by excusing their absences from classes, either for training or for tournaments. And the coaches, of course, for athletic coaches are always pushing them to perform athletically. There's no real academic assessment in India by the athletic coaches, right? But that is not the case when it comes to universities. When it comes to universities, the student is assessed academically as well as athletically. And this does become a challenge for some of our students, and really managing their time effectively is the key to how these students can be successful in maintaining a good academic as well as athletic balance. So that said, to summarize, our most successful players have been of some national and in some cases international merit in order to be able to achieve the success that they have achieved athletically, but also they have had to persevere and work very hard to meet the university's academic eligibility requirements, and we have been able to guide them with both in both their athletic communications as well as their improving their academic profile through the counseling and application process to U.S. universities. So we are happy to be able to assess your potential to join, to become a student athlete. So feel free to contact us and send us your profile so that we can help you take your ambitions further. Thank you very much for attending today's session. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them at this time. Shishir Ghosh wanted to know where we are broadcasting from. We were broadcasting from Chennai. This seminar is, as I have been saying, it is about being a student athlete, a successful student athlete in the US university system for your undergraduate studies. What about basketball? Is it encouraged in the United States? Basketball is one of the most competitive recruitment sports in the United States. So we will definitely be happy to look at your basketball profile to see what potential there is. We will help you reach out to coaches, but the important thing is that you already have some international exposure in basketball in order to be able to compete at the college level. So these are the three main questions I see on the board, all of them from Shishir Ghosh. Are there any other questions at this time? Sishir, have I been able to answer your questions? Okay. If there are no further questions at this time, we will end today's session. We thank you for attending the session and feel free to contact us at any time for a US University assessment for college athletics. Thank you and have a good evening.